Now in Elite 16s, $100,000 of prize money also tacked on to the top, and you have a weird 24 team format. So why do I say weird? So 24 is the most difficult number with which to run a tournament. And we saw that last year with challenges. So there were forfeits after forfeits after forfeits, because in a modified pool play format, if you win your first, you could do whatever you want with your second, because winning doesn't actually advance you in the tournament. And the most common argument is, well, wouldn't you still want to win? Because if you win your pool, you'll likely draw a 3 seed that came out of pool. But the World Tour is way too deep, right? You see guys like Evandro and Arthur, they lost their first round in Recife, and everyone was just forfeiting to get out of their way, as they should have, because they went on. Evandro went God mode, 37 aces, they win the tournament. And we see that all the time. And so teams just didn't bother. They said, you know what, I'm not going to play in the 90-degree Recife heat. I'm just going to take off, kick my legs up, and I will just accept my 2 seed, to a point that teams were actually racing to get to the forfeits first. And that was a huge problem. And I'm glad that Volleyball World did something about that by increasing the field to 32. 32 is an awesome number. Now in a modified pool play format, if you win your pool, you get a bye straight into the round of 16. The 2s and 3s will then play in that first round. Those 8 winners play the 8 teams who got a bye in that first round, and it's a nice, clean, and tidy 16-team bracket from there on out. Awesome. Would it be better if it was a 32-team double limb? Always. Give me double limb or give me death, but I will settle for more prize money, a 32-team tournament, and we're good to go from there. Now, on to the Elite 16s, or Elite 24, Elites, whatever you want to call them. So what they did with the Elite 16s this year, they went from 16 to 24. Previously, there were 12 teams straight in. 4 would come out of a 2-round qualifier. Now there are 16 teams straight in. You got 8 coming out of a 1-round qualifier. All right, so you win and you're in. That is then broken up into 6 pools of 4. And you might say, wait, isn't this exactly what we saw with the challenges a year ago? Yes, which presents the strangest format I've seen in beach volleyball. And so you have your 6 pools of 4. And now if you win your pool, there's an incentive. You get a bye straight into the enigmatic round of 12. All right, and then teams 2 and 3, they will play in the first round. Those 6 winners then play the 6 pool winners in a round of 12. They then play, if you win, you're advancing into the quarterfinals. But here's where it gets tricky, and here's where the bracket gets totally wacky, in that you have 6 teams in the quarterfinals. But to run a quarterfinal, you need 8. And so where do we draw those 2 teams from? This is where the confusion lies, and this is where pitchforks and torches were raised, including my own. I'm with you on this one. They drew it from the 2 teams who lost by the least amount in that round of 12. So yes, Kame Schock and James Shaw, they lost to Tomas Capgrosso and Nico Capgrosso of Argentina. Yes, Hendrik Moll and Matthias Bernsen, they lost. Yes, in spite of losing, they both advanced in the tournament. Yes, Therese Cannon and Megan Kraft lost to Kelly Chang and Molly Shaw, and yes, they sure did advance in the tournament. Yes, they sure did beat Sinja Tillman and Savannah Mueller. Yes, they sure did beat Kelly and Molly in their rematch, and now they're playing for gold. And so it's wild. And I put up a picture of the nonsensical looking bracket on BVB, and I just put the puke emoji. I was like, someone explain this to me. And the sentiment was echoed by every fan who sent me a message, almost every player. A lot of the players were still confused. Now, there were a couple in support, and from what I understand is that this was actually sort of a joint decision by the FIVB and a players committee. So the players have their player representatives. They then negotiate certain things with the FIVB. You get your compromises, which is where the prize money and the expanded fields and the bonus pools, all that comes from, and evidently also this format. Now, you might be asking, how did we end up here? So 24 teams is the most difficult number to run a comprehensible format. Right? You got a couple different options. Modified pool, and you get the issues that plagued the challenges for the last couple of years, and that there's no incentive to win, so you get a bunch of forfeits. Then you have double elim. And again, give me double elim or give me death. I'm a double elim purist, but that does have its flaws. So in a double elim with a 24 team, you have 8 teams who get a bye in the first round. You have 16 playing into those 8. Fine, totally fine. The 8 who win then move on, and the 8 who lose move down. But then if you win and then lose, this is the only format I've ever seen in sports where if you win and then lose, you actually go backwards, where it's as if you had never won at all. And so a lot of teams could look at this, and evidently this was actually discussed in the meetings with the players in the FIVB, in that they don't think that there was enough incentive for teams to play hard and win that first one, and that forfeits were still a possibility. The scar tissue from all those forfeits, pretty fresh, right? So I don't blame them for not wanting to go with a system where forfeits were still possible. Now, the AVP actually used to run 24-team double elimination tournaments in Hermosa, and this happened to me 2 years in a row. Right, so me and Hagen Smith, we come out of the qualifier, we win our first round, beat the McKibben brothers. I'll forever be grateful and indebted to Madison McKibben for punting a ball, getting a red card, and literally gifting us the first set. We go on to win in 3, but then we go on to lose to Ed Ratledge and Rafu Rodriguez, who were piping hot, fresh off their San Francisco win. And then we drop down. We have to play an hour later, a third match, which is really our 6th, because we had to play in the qualifier the day before. And we're playing a very fresh Mike Bogue and Bobby Jacobs, who I just lost, and we're chilling the whole day. I'm full body cramping. Hagen carries me to a win. We end up moving on to Saturday. We get our asses kicked by Troy Field and Chase Frischman. Next year, do the same exact thing with Miles Magututia. Win, lose, win, get our ass kicked on Saturday. But the AVP, what they did was they differentiated the finishes. So if you won, lost, you finished higher than if you had lost, even though you technically lost in the same round. And so from what I understand in the discussions, the FIVB didn't think that there was enough incentive with prize money and points, which the AVP, they added prize money and points if you won, lost, and if you had just lost. They didn't think that it was enough and that there would still be some forfeits. And so that's why double elim was also off the table. There was also the discussion that double elim is more matches, which is just a terrible excuse, because if you run a 24-team double elim and a 24-team modified pool play, the way they're doing it with elites, there are exactly 6 more total matches, and that's not a big enough number for that to be a valid excuse. So I think it just came down to that wacky thing where if you win and then you lose, you actually go backwards. To me, that's where it was decided, because they're avoiding forfeits, and I totally understand that. But that's where we are at now. So I don't know what you want to call this format, but you get this round of 12 where you're going to get 2 lucky losers in the middle of the tournament. And it's crazy, and I don't like it, and I don't think you guys like it, but it's the biggest loss, I think, of a tremendous offseason for Volleyball World, and then they just couldn't get out of their own way with this format, because it's hard for players to understand, it's hard for fans to understand, and the whole goal is to make it a simple format for people to follow. And just the sheer amount of questions I had of didn't Therese and Meg just lose? And I thought Kame and James just saw, and now Therese and Meg, they're in the finals? How did that happen? It's fair questions. And so that's the explainer of how it works. So basically, if you're in that round of 12 and you don't lose bad enough, and it's just straight up points. So if you lose by, say, 21-19, 21-19 in 2, versus losing by 5 total points in 3, losing in 2 is actually better. And you can argue that until you're red in the face. I think if you win a set, you should be ahead of a team that got swept, but I don't make the rules, for better or worse. And so that's where we're at. And it is just my dream one day that we're going to have 32-team double elims, just challenge format, 32-team double elim, elite, whatever you want to call it, Grand Slam, 32-team double elim, and it's easy to follow. You get rewarded when you win, you get punished when you lose, you get 2 losses. If you lose twice, you're out of the tournament, and it's fair and it's equitable. But that's where we're at. So I just wanted to explain that change in format. So many people were wondering, and it's going to be chaos through the rest of the year. So 2 steps forward, 1 step back there for Volleyball World. They get still, because of the and I do want to make this note, I would rather have a 24-team format that is wildly confusing than just a 16-team format, because I would so much rather have those 8 extra teams get the shot. I would rather have the additional prize money. I think when you look at it as a whole, it was good. The format needs some work, and I think we can just agree on that, and we can move on.